really 8 factors that are causing this labor shortage, and this is what I'm going to focus on today. Okay? Things that you need to understand the context of the environment that we're now working, because it is not your father's workplace anymore. And unless you've lived, and looking around the room, I don't see anybody that's been there, but unless you lived during the Industrial Revolution, when we moved from agriculture to industry, which was about the mid-19th century, let's say if anybody was living around 1840 to 1880, when they started to automate, when they brought machinery in to replace people doing farm work, it's dramatically changed. No one's ever lived through a time like this. Our grandparents or our great-great-grandparents or great-great-grandparents might have lived through a time like this. But there's nobody in this room, and there's nobody in business today that has lived through switching eras, going from agriculture to industry, and we're going from an industrial age to a knowledge age. Significant, significant changes. So we're going to talk about disruptive technologies a little bit. We're going to talk about definition of work, types of work, 4 generations. Those are the 4 major ones. The other 4 are significant trends and demographic trends, society trends that we don't necessarily consider because those of us who've been around in the workplace for 30 or 40 years have seen these gradually. Again, not the best metaphor, but it's one that people use all the time, and it's probably politically correct to say it. You know, it's if you put a frog in that hot boiling water, it jumps out. If you put it in water and it's a slow simmer up to the boiling point, it doesn't jump out. It gets caught because it doesn't recognize that it's getting hotter and hotter. And that's kind of the world we live in. So for those of us who've been around, skill gaps, oh yeah, we've had problem hiring people before. In fact, 10 years ago or 15 years ago when I first started to talk about the perfect labor storm, it was Gen X that was the problem. And there's many of Gen Xers in here. You know, Gen X were born between 1965 and 1980. And free agents were different than the baby boomers. This was the generation, the first generation that really didn't get married right away. They were single. They weren't staying in jobs. There wasn't a loyalty. There was a job hopping. It was also the generation involved with the dot-com. You know, 16 to 20-year-olds were all dropping out of school, not going to college in order to be a millionaire by the time they were 30. That story has obviously gone by the wayside. But there are always these gaps. There was always the prior generation had a problem with the next generation coming. It's now broader than it's ever been, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But those are some of the things that are going on in the background, and you really need to be aware of these when you plan for the future of your